Hi, my name's Rob Scott, and today I'm joined by Core to discuss the true impact of Microsoft Teams on enterprise IT management. So welcome, everybody.
Hi, Rob.
Hey, Rob.
Hello.
Hi.
So before we get stuck in, how about we have a round of introductions? Eamon, would you like to go first?
Hi, Rob. My name is Eamon McGann. I'm the Client Solutions Director here at Core. We're a Microsoft Gold partner based in the city. We specialize in Microsoft 365, helping customers both onboard, deliver and manage both collaboration and productivity elements of Microsoft 365 and platform management and security of Microsoft 365.
Great. Thanks, Eamon, and welcome. Davide, over to you.
Hi, Rob. My name is Davide Ranchetti, and my role is Lead Solutions Architect here at Core. My focus is on Office 365 in particular, which means that I spend a lot of time with our customers planning solutions for Office 365. I lead workshops, and of course I work on the solution design, and I also lead our team of consultants and developers that build our solutions.
Great, thank you, David. And finally, Kat.
Yep, hi. So I'm Kat Greenan. I'm a Microsoft Solutions Specialist here at Core. And my role is to help our customers use Teams. I'm a little bit of a Teams nerd, and I really enjoy kind of working with our customers, making sure that they're using it properly in the best way for their business.
Great, thank you, Kat, and welcome everybody. So let's get started. So this session's quite an interesting one for me because I too work with Teams quite a lot day to day. So managing Teams isn't an easy task, is it? So it needs to be controlled to ensure data security and privacy, and everyone's ultimately using it effectively to be productive in business. So in this session, I hope that Core are going to share their real world experiences with us and uncover the key challenges that are keeping CIOs up at night. So Eamon, a great place to start would be with you. What is keeping the CIO up at night?
Yeah, great question, Rob. And I think as a kind of an intro to Teams and what underlies Teams, there are a number of things that we're seeing. And part of my role as Client Solutions Director is I have the great opportunity of being out with CIOs, CEOs of various sizes, various sectors. And we're kind of hearing the same themes time and time again. Security, I think it's at top of everybody's list. There's a couple of others, but if I start with security and stay with security for a second, I think one of the key things we're seeing with security is, a lot of the CIOs we talk to are aware that the world has changed. We're now in a zero trust world, so the old-fashioned perimeter security is gone. We want people to be mobile. We want them to work within the firewall, as we call it. So zero trust has created lots of opportunity, and Teams is at the heart of that, but it has created a lot of risk and threats. And firstly, ID management is a huge concern for a lot of CIOs. As humans, we're pretty awful at managing passwords. Saw some surveys recently that up to 50% of people actually give their passwords away when asked by an IT person, and another 65% of people will then use that password in multiple places. So for a CIO, that's a huge challenge. You have to assume that half of your staff are potentially giving away fairly serious information, which leads to the second security issue, which is the whole point of security management. How do we manage that environment? How do we manage the IDs and so on? So security management, password management, and threat management. Where's the threat coming from? I was in a meeting with a client just after Christmas, relatively large organization, and the CIO said, he stays literally that phrase. I'm awake most nights going, where's the next threat coming from? Where am I going to get that email threat and so on? So a lot of worry out there about those kind of things. And I think for us, the key message is with particularly Microsoft 365, a lot of our customers have the tooling. It's about enabling the tooling, making sure it's configured properly. Again, another stat that I've seen and that we see in practice is things like multi-factor authentication, MFA. Almost all of our customers have it, but as little as 20-30% are actually using it. And that's a challenge for the CIO. They know they want to roll it out. They're aware that customers are concerned about the adoption of things like being asked to use double authentication and that type of thing. So configuring it properly, configuring it in a non-intrusive way is a challenge. And I think finally, if you look at zero trust and the fact that people in things like Teams, and I know myself and Kat and Davide a lot of what we hear about when we're out talking to customers is we have a lot of security on our email, and we fixed that. Is Teams now this wild west? Is it open? And I think the message we want to get across is things like data loss prevention, retention, all of those things are just as configurable in Teams chat as they are in any of the Office 365 environments. So it's education, knowledge, and being able to use those tools in a good way. So security is a massive concern, but actually there are a lot of ways we can help, and there's a lot of things happening in that space. The second point, I think, was modern workspace. It's probably where Teams is at the center of it. I know Kat spends a lot of time, and we'll probably talk about it later on, but we're out with customers. There's a huge expectation that we're in the new world of work. For me, for example, one of the stats we quote is a Gartner survey from 2019 where CIOs, one of the main reasons they're moving to things like Teams and the cloud is because of new world of work. We've got 5 generations in the workplace, and Gen Zs, they expect products like Teams. So great that people want it, but the CIO has to make sure that he puts it in and adopts it. And I think my final comment, and there's several I could do, but and I think it's an area that Davide is close to Davide's heart, and that's citizen developers. So the power and capability of things like Power Platform, we're seeing a massive explosion, something we refer to as the Excel warriors. So the people in the business who can do some really cool stuff with things like Power Platform. Again, for the CIO, great opportunity for him or her to work through a backlog of business process, but now he's got to manage that. He's got to manage shadow IT. So I think my summary of all of that is it's a great time for CIOs. They've got a lot of opportunity, but they've got to manage the risk that goes with that. And that probably is some of the key concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kat, you're pretty close to the front line as well. And in terms of modern working practices, how does that affect the well-being and the health of these leaders that have got to really take care and manage this kind of always-on technology?
Yeah, I think a couple of examples when kind of talking to our customers. There was one customer where we were speaking to one of their users, and they said, the other day I spent my whole day in my email, answering emails and sending emails. So there wasn't much focus time that they had to actually get some other work done. So what they were finding is they were working later, they weren't hitting their kind of deadlines, and there was stress, and that just wasn't healthy. So now we have the ability to have different tools where it's more like a shared workload. Something like Teams where it's more collaborative, and the conversations that you're moving into Teams, they're just a little bit more kind of quick and productive than in an email. And just in terms of being able to work from anywhere is massive. So I am actually based in Cardiff, and I travel to visit our customers around the country, and also in London quite a lot as well. So the fact that I can on my phone go in on the train, it's 2 hours, and I can do work, I can do files, I can chat, I can have those conversations. So actually, if I'm working with customers, I don't have to go to the customer and then go back to the office to actually be productive and get work done. Again, I don't have to kind of work as late because I can still be productive on the go. And just being able to work from home as well is a huge kind of benefit for the users that we're speaking to, with childcare and just having that work-life balance. I can work in Cardiff, I can work in London, I can work on the train and still have the same experience. So it's really powerful stuff, really.
Yeah, I completely echo that. And I now get the Microsoft Teams well-being emails and that tell me how well I am, which I find fascinating. But certainly there is a huge trend, isn't there, at the moment towards remote working, especially in light of the recent coronavirus. It's even more, well, there's such a big light being shined on remote working capabilities right now. And Microsoft Teams is right in the center of that conversation, isn't it? So over to Davide. I wanted to ask you, Davide, what's the expectation when kind of looking to deploy Microsoft Teams versus actually putting it into practice?
I would say there is definitely an expectation that Teams it's an easy platform to deploy and roll out because, first of all, it's a cloud-based platform, and it's well integrated with Office 365. And there is also the expectation that it will be easy to adopt it. Reality check is we actually need to plan carefully for rollout and adoption, and it's not something we can just switch on. So if we look at the technical rollout, we need to plan for infrastructure, for networking capabilities, and also information architecture. We can't just switch it on and hope it's going to work. Companies have invested over time a lot of money on hardware, on conferencing hardware, other conferencing platforms. They have different versions of Exchange Online, Exchange on-prem. Some companies are using SharePoint Online and OneDrive, some others are not. You need to make sure that you have everything in place to fully leverage the potential of Microsoft Teams. And speaking of adoption, I know this is Kat's bread and butter, but of course, people nowadays are used to chat-based applications, both in the work environment and in their private lives. If we speak of the working environment, people have been using Skype for Business, of course, but also more informal platforms like Slack or Yammer, if we stay with Microsoft. And surely there is the expectation that Teams is another communication platforms like the one that I've mentioned, but the reality is that Teams is much more than that. So switching it on and allow people to use it how they use Slack. So go on and create whatever you want, create your channels for memes, for cat videos, and no one is gonna monitor what you're doing. It's not really gonna work for Microsoft Teams. Some organizations want to use Teams to manage also their sensitive information, so it definitely needs to be planned in line with the rest of the enterprise information architecture. And as Eamon mentioned before, there are a lot of tools that we can use to make sure that the information that we put in Teams is safe and its life cycle is correctly managed. The problem is that, well, Office 365 is a growing platform, and there are a lot of features and a little bit of confusion sometimes, because we now have Azure information protection policies, data loss prevention policies, expiration policies, groups rules, and so on and so on. So you really need to know where to put your hands to configure Teams in the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a huge product when you really lift the bonnet on Microsoft Teams. It can do so much, can't it?
Absolutely, because, sorry if I interrupt, but you just remind me something very important. Behind Teams, we actually have SharePoint, which is a huge, complex platform. And in the early days of Teams, SharePoint was used merely as a repository, but the integration is getting deeper and deeper, and we can surface basically everything that exists in SharePoint into Microsoft Teams. So really understand the key platforms that allow Teams to work is really, really important. We have Exchange, we have SharePoint, and OneDrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is such a magnificent product. So with this kind of magnificence comes a heck of a lot of responsibility for an IT leader to deploy something like this. Eamon, over to you on this one, but how does an IT leader prepare for a transition? Is it the IT leader or is it a joined up effort? But how do they prepare for bringing Teams into the organization?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question in terms of who. Yes, the IT leader has a responsibility, but Teams, like a number of the technologies that are in the Microsoft space, is much more ubiquitous through the organization, and business leaders as well as IT leaders feel a shared responsibility for it. I think one of the key points around Teams is that the vision for Teams is that it is the single pane of glass, and we've had that concept from lots of vendors over the last X number of years. But, the messaging, both we're seeing with customers, we're seeing with Microsoft themselves. I'm just back from a visit from the US in Microsoft Corp. They are absolutely pushing Teams as the single pane of glass. So to deploy that and transition to that, the thing that we're seeing is, email is past tense, and I'm not sure if I ever expected to hear people saying that. Myself and Kat were at a workshop with a client a couple of weeks ago, and we had quite a large number of people. It was a public sector organisation here in the UK, and they really, within a few hours, the realisation in the room was this could really be the end of the mess that is email. And that was genuine comments. Didn't hear that 12 months ago. I'm hearing it now. So if we're going to get it to a single pane of glass, there are things that we've got to get right. David has touched on it. The technology is moving with it. Things like SharePoint and integration. This month alone, Microsoft have released a whole set of new features in Teams. So there's much better Outlook integration. There's much better application integration. And files, which are close to my heart personally. I've done a lot of document management in the past. The way of managing files through SharePoint, through Teams, is much more cohesive now than it was even a month ago. So Microsoft are putting a lot of effort into making sure that you can actually go into Teams and do everything, which probably brings me to the final point, which isn't just email, it is business process, it is applications. And Davide and Kat, if you don't mind, I'll throw it to you guys, your experiences of seeing Teams light up business process and light up things like apps. Whichever one of you want to take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my point of view, there are two levels into productivity and apps. Teams offer some out-of-the-box integration with the productivity suite. You can work with your Office apps, for example, with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Planner, OneDrive, OneNote, directly into Teams without leaving the Teams experience, and also co-authoring with the other members of your teams and your channels. And then the second level is business apps. Now, with the Power Platform that is growing exponentially, we can build low-code, no-code solutions that can be easily surfaced in Teams and integrated with the rest of your Office 365 suites, but also other business applications, data warehouses, and data sources in your organization. Some of these applications are very UI focused. You can build nice UI and interfaces using Power Apps. Others are more conversational, because surely you have heard of the many chatbots that exist in Teams nowadays. And others are process focused. We have now Power Automate, which is a great workflow platform to build your business processes and surface them anywhere. And one of the things that I love about the Power Platform is that your application, your process doesn't exist just in one location, one device, but it's available everywhere. So the same experience you would have in Microsoft Teams on your laptop when you're working at the office, you're going to have exactly the same over the web if you are somewhere else using another device or on your smartphone.
Just to echo on that as well, so when we are kind of explaining this to customers, when we're in workshops, there was a government customer that we were working with, and they had a lot of very manual, very long paper-based processes, even for things like getting new kit, like a new laptop or any kind of new devices. It was just very long and manual. So we kind of showed the art of the possible, where they could move that kind of business process into something like Teams, where it's more automated. You can have approvals in there as well, and they were just gobsmacked about how much that affects not just their time of even getting the devices, but also the fact that, you know, they're using a lot of paper and spending a lot of money just still having that old process in place. So they were kind of very gobsmacked and shocked about the ability to move that into something like Teams. You wouldn't think it. You would think it's just a collaboration chat platform, but it's not. It can really change an organization and change the way that they work. So it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kat. And in terms of adopting these technologies, there's so much happening in Teams: voice, video, chat, meetings, and bots. How important is it to have a user adoption strategy in place before you implement or even consider purchasing something like Microsoft Teams?
Very, very important. So we kind of, when we talk to customers, we have two key things when it comes to rolling out Microsoft Teams. One side of that is some of the stuff that Davide has touched on, so the governance, the security. There's obviously a technical consideration there. There is also the other side, which is the people side. Teams is going to change the way that you're working. It's going to change behavior. It's going to change the culture of the organization. So you need to have, from the get-go, a plan on rolling out Teams and how this is actually going to be used for the business. We mentioned, is it IT or is it not? I think it's a combination of both. One thing that we do as an exercise is we get IT in the room, and we also get people from the business areas, your HR, your marketing, your finance, and actually do an exercise where we show them Teams and ask, how do you see this working for you? How would you use it? And that's gold dust for IT, because then they can actually make sure it's valuable and understand what's in it for them. There's obviously there's quite a lot when it comes to adoption change management, but it is so crucial. So you have things like communication, what's in it for me. There's the training, understanding how it's going to be used, the business scenarios, training that to your staff. There's thinking about things like champions and sponsors, people to advocate, so you can kind of easily scale in a large organization, for an example. And also resistance management. So the people don't like change, and you will get, in every organization, I don't think I've ever been to one where everyone's kind of saying, yeah, this is great, we're gonna use it. So you have to have a plan to manage that resistance. What are you going to do when you do get people who say it doesn't work for me, or I don't have time, or key themes that we usually hear. And there's the last kind of piece, which is many people do forget, which is rewards and recognition. So this is, you've done your communication, you've told the organization what you're going to be doing, how it's going to help them, you've trained them, but what then? How do you keep that momentum going and keep reinforcing it? So one nice thing that we like to do is do recognition, where that may be a thank you from the CEO, or a post on the internet, or whatever it may be, just to kind of reinforce the use of Teams where someone's used it quite well. So there's a few steps in there, and that's what we kind of take customers through when we work with them. Is we'll sort out the governance piece for you, but also let's go through your adoption management, your people feed of Teams.
And if I can expand a little bit on governance, I think most of the organizations, most of the IT departments are really worried about governance, because what we've seen happening with SharePoint, for example, in the past is the famous sprawl. You allow teams, you allow anyone in the organization to create teams, and you end up with 600 teams in an organization with 300 employees. These are like real world numbers. So there is definitely the interest to create a governance plan for teams and a more structured creation process for teams. Internally, we have worked on a solution to request the creation of a team, get these reviewed and approved by IT, and also a little engine that automatically creates the team for you using a specific template that keeps the information architecture aligned with the rest of the organization, and also has a clear audit trail of what's happening and where the information is. And speaking of the wider life cycle, it's really important to understand not just how you create teams, but how teams should be archived, closed, or potentially deleted. There are powerful tools that are part of Office 365, and in particular the group expiration policy. And as I mentioned before, this is one of those things that at first is not really intuitive, because it's not a feature of Teams, but is a feature of Office 365 groups. That is a technology that spans across different platforms in Office 365. But it's definitely something I would suggest people to look into it, because these policies allow us to automate the archival, disposition, deletion of content from Microsoft Teams.
I think just to summarize kind of both your points, guys, I think, Rob, our key message it really is, and we work very closely with Microsoft on this, Teams is absolutely exploding. It's creating an environment of collaboration and productivity that wasn't there even a few years ago. So we do want to encourage and provide the ability to people to self-service and collaborate as they need to. but providing that little bit of guardrails and safety that it's in line with the business information architecture and process. So getting those two hand in hand so that the business users feel empowered is key. Teams is about empowerment and collaboration, but align that to some guardrails behind the scenes that keep it governed. I think we're in a win-win situation. And that's where we see really powerful adoption, not just sprawled adoption, but powerful business-oriented adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. Microsoft Teams can be an absolutely transformational product for a business. So I completely agree. In terms of finding out more information, I believe Core has a teamwork assessment workshop available. So if you are an organization looking to deploy Teams, or you're already on that journey and it's maybe not going so well and you need help, do hop over to core.co.uk. There's a URL on the screen that you can head towards to check out their teamwork assessment workshop. So I'd like to thank you, the Core team, for joining me today. Thank you very much. Have a good week.